Prepare myself.
Prepare yourself, Mr. Shayla.
Why do you always record it?
For social media.
No one can see that Bambos has a camera off to the side recording us as we're doing the introduction. Today we're on with Mike Iamele.
Iamele.
In 2014, he writes a blog post and he comes out in the blog post. He goes to sleep and wakes up the next day to find out that that blog post has been shared over 100,000 times. Basically, it was a massive coming out party. So we're going to discuss how that feels, what he learned, what he would do differently in the future. And we're doing that on
A wonderful
Chaos.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Finally sitting next to each other again.
Yeah.
That was terrible lighting last night.
Yeah, you were pretty dark, weren't you? We should get you into the shot a bit more.
How are you?
I have been feeling very, I don't know what you'd say. I'm doing so much that I'm having a hard time slowing down and just smelling the roses. So I'm just feeling, and the worst part of it is that I'm so productive and I like being productive that it also is something that I keep wanting to keep going. So it's not like it's not productive time. So last night I wrote a 1,500 word article around the building.
Yeah.
And I'm now going to try to get it into Architectural Digest. And we got the photos and the whole spread. So I'm like thinking, wow. And that was just, you know how I work on a whim.
Yeah.
You know, that trip when I walked the
beach,
the west coast of the Netherlands, and so I'm going to write an article and I'm going to get it published, and I got published. So I just get these whims and I'm like, I'm going to do this. And they kind of overtake me. And then as I'm doing them, at some point I have to slow down and say, oh, if it doesn't happen, it's also okay. Yeah.
Beautiful.
But yeah, so I've been feeling a little bit disconnected. Yeah.
So are you doing your steps? Are you looking after yourself?
I've done my steps. I study Spanish half an hour a day. Yo quiero un auto.
I've been learning Spanish today too.
Yeah, Duolingo. We're actually, I think Duolingo should be the people who sponsor the show because I love their app.
And there's going to be a show where we get to speak Spanish.
Exactly. That'll be a comic hour. People can laugh at us.
Yeah.
How have you been doing? I mean, you weren't feeling well yesterday.
Yeah.
So you did the whole COVID test thing. How was that all?
Yeah, I thought I had COVID. That's why I stayed home, canceled all my photo shoots, and now I've rescheduled them. I spent the day rescheduling the shoots.
Yeah.
But I saw that my clients were very grateful that I did that.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't have COVID, so I went to the doctor today just to check and see if I've had COVID in
the past.
I don't know, but I was at the doctor. She says, "Yeah, you've got perfect heartbeat. Everything's perfect." And I'm like, maybe it's also my lifestyle. Like, I don't know what happens if I don't do breath work or if I don't do ice baths.
Yeah.
But I saw the doctor couldn't meet me in that space, and I'm like, "Don't worry about it. Let's just do the blood test, and we're good." So, Mike, Andy, how did you find this one again?
Mike, I did my trolling on Facebook. I like to get you on the mic here.
And what caught your curiosity with this specific?
I'm always fascinated. The way we live today, people's lives can change in an instant. And it's like a lottery. It may even be a lottery you don't want to win. But when you've won the lottery, all of a sudden, your life changes without you having expected it. And if you think to yourself, he writes a blog that gets shared over 100,000 times in a day. I mean, we haven't had that many people watch our show, and we've been doing it for over a year.
I think that might change now that Mike's on the show.
Yeah, exactly.
Andy,
Yeah.
but he wrote a blog, and what was is
The
that something
blog was he came out in a blog. Basically, no one in his life necessarily knew that he was gay. And he said, "Hey, I'm gay, guys." And then all of a sudden, how he articulated, I'm sure, was very beautiful, because if not, no one's going to share it forward. So there's something in that article that was so special and resonated with people, is that 100,000 people needed to share it forward.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm sure when he wrote it, it came from a very, very deep, honest place, and it was probably so well written that it had the impact that he it's almost like the two sides of a coin. You're really happy that people loved it, and oh shit, now what do I do? You know, it's like, it's almost the funniest thing in life. A lot of times, I told you with the last letter, when it went well, that was the first book, I was really like I was like, I wrote it, I was happy it was done, and then it started to sell and people really enjoyed it, and then I felt a strange sense of, wow, now I kind of feel like I need to do something with this. Where before I was like, oh, I just throw it in the world and it does what it does and it's okay.
Yeah, that really resonated also for me.
And I also can also see that there's a degree of, I'm not really goal oriented.
Nice.
Is that true? Would you say that's true? Because you know me, I don't feel like I like to do things well, but I wouldn't say I'm goal oriented.
I would say that let's take the preparation for the house.
Yeah.
It had to be done. We had a deadline.
Yeah.
So there was a goal, but I also saw some things weren't working out, like the bed sheets upstairs.
Yeah.
And I saw some surrender there. I actually don't know what you did for that, but anyway.
Yeah. I found another pair of sheets.
Good.
So I think it'd be nice to bring Mike on and see what really happened, because he might have a story that's not half as good as the one we just made up.
It's so interesting to be backstage and hear people talking about you while you're just kind of sitting there. It's really interesting experience.
The fun thing is we can see your
reactions. We can see your reactions, of course.
Right.
The worst is for us is when we're talking and we see people stone-faced. And we're like, and we say something that we think is funny, and then we just see them looking, and they're like, "Oh no, we're in trouble now."
And then you see them like logging out.
Yeah,
that never happened actually.
No, not yet.
Mike, can you share a little? Because I'm curious. You wrote a book.
I did. Yeah.
Did the book come out and then you wrote the blog, or was it the other way around?
So it was all kind of intertwined. So basically, I'll start a little bit before that because it's all a leading up story. So I was pretty successful early in life. At about 22 years old, I started a public relations agency, and I worked with a lot of executives in the industry. I worked with a lot of tech billionaires. And then a few years later, I woke up. I was still working at this company, and I was vomiting blood. And that didn't stop for about 2 months straight. So it was a pretty scary experience in my life. I was in my mid-20s. I vomited blood every day. I was hospitalized a few times just to get fluids because I was losing fluid so quickly. I was kind of shopped around to a few different doctors, and I had a few different diagnoses, but it wasn't conclusive. Nothing was really making sense here. And so at the time in my life, it got pretty bad. Like, I went into work one day and I had to go to the bathroom, and I tried to make it to the bathroom and I didn't make it. And I shit my pants at work. And it was just like, I couldn't leave the house anymore. I mean, I couldn't control my bowels. And so I had two roommates at the time. One of them was my older sister's friend. And, she had a boyfriend. She wasn't there very often. And the other one was a guy I knew from college. And we were friendly, but we weren't super close. And he was on pharmacy residency. So he kind of knew the medical system. He also was home during the day, quite frankly. So when I couldn't drive myself to pick up prescriptions or go to the hospital, he would drive me. And over the course of 2 months, he would start, cooking me dinner and sitting on the couch with me. And it got to a point where I realized I kind of feel something for him. And it didn't necessarily feel sexual. I wasn't sure if it felt romantic, but I felt something. And this was strange for me because up until this point in my life, I had never been with a man, and to my conscious knowledge, never been interested. I dated women. I very happily dated women. And so I'm sitting here, and to give you some context, I'm kind of thinking shit, am I just scared I'm going to die? And this is a human within proximity, being nice to me. I mean, I didn't know what to think about this, But I was also in this really crazy point in my life where I did think I was going to die. And so I was doing radical therapies. Like I was writing handwritten letters to every member of my family saying everything I've never said out loud. I mean, I was just doing like anything that could get me better. I was reading books every day, acupuncture, reflexology, Reiki, like you name it, I was doing it. And so I'm at this moment and I kind of think, if it were any other time in my life, feelings go away. I probably would have brushed it under the rug. But I thought, no, Mike, like vomiting blood, I can't stuff things down. I've got to just like put it out there. I said, he might want to move out. He might want to punch me in the face, but I'm going to say something. Like so I got up the nerve. And one day I said, Garrett, I don't even know how to talk about it. His name's Garrett. I said, I feel something here. And I don't think it's sexual. Maybe it's romantic. I don't know. But like, this feels like more than friendship. And I don't know how you'll react, but I just feel like I need to be honest about it. And I'm lucky that Garrett is one of the most thoughtful people I've ever met because he said, okay, it's a little weird, but I'll think about this. Like, let's talk about it. And so, right now I'm condensing months into a few minutes. So there's a lot more that goes into it. But, we sent emails back and forth in our kind of private time thinking. We had conversations. And we ultimately decided to explore a relationship. And so we still at the time, it was an open relationship. We dated women at the time. We weren't physical at first, but we were exploring a relationship together. And after about 1.5 years of exploring this, I actually remember the time we decided to be exclusive. We were at a party and I saw him kiss a girl and I got jealous. And I said, okay, something has changed. Like if I am now jealous, something is going on here. And so after about 1.5 years, we became exclusive and we decided this was a real thing. But in that 1.5 years, we didn't tell our family. We told like very few close friends because we didn't know if it was real or like what this was, or if this was this blip. And I was still sick. So there was this thought like, what if I get better and then this is just nothing? And so it was a very kind of surreal time in my life. But we ended up, telling our families about it after this 1.5 years. And it kind of coincided with something that was changing at work because I got the sense if you're vomiting blood, probably not the best job for you. So I knew it was probably time to leave this job. And I decided to do what I never, ever, ever recommend anyone listening do, which is give a year's notice at work. Because I decided I'm an owner, right? This is my obligation to make sure the company's in good shape. But it was hell. It was hell to work at a company being kind of phased out for 1 year, not be able to tell my clients, not be able to tell my assistant. Like it was a very hard dynamic. And while all this is going on, I'm going to nutrition school and herbalism school. I'm navigating my first same-sex relationship. I'm trying to heal myself. I mean, it was a hellish year. But I finished that and I thought, you know what? I'm just going to be like the herbalist to Boston's tech entrepreneurs because I was sick. I know all these people. Let me help them out and not be sick. So I decided to be an herbalist. About the same time we told my parents that we were together. Mostly went well. Not everybody. Everyone got there eventually. We won't name names today, but mostly went well. And I started being an herbalist and I wasn't making a lot of money. And I thought, shit, Mike, like you just gave up this amazing job. Like no 22-year-old's making this much money. Now I was like 26 or 27. I said, this is, like I gave it all up for nothing. So I said, all right, slow down. I'm a writer. I've been a ghostwriter for many people. Why don't I, write about my story? I've never, ever at this point in my life written my own story. And I wasn't ready to talk about my relationship. That was not the story because not people in my life knew about that. But I was ready to talk about being successful at a young age and realizing success isn't what it's cracked up to be. And I thought I can start a blog. And so I started my first blog. And about 3 months later, I got an email. And at this point, I should say this, some publications asked me to write for them. So I was doing some more writing than just the blog. But I got an email from someone who said they'd been following me and she was an editor for a publishing house and asked if she could give me a book deal. And so this was one of those moments where you're kind of like, what the hell? Does this happen? Like you just get a book deal and sure, you're going to give me an advance to do what I'm already doing. I can do that. And so I wrote this book, but in the process, we, got close, we talked, and she learned about my relationship. And she herself she's a queer editor. And she said, I really want you to talk about this relationship in the book. It's an important part of your story. I think this is really relevant. And so I said, okay. So she convinced me. I put it in. I turned in that manuscript. And then I thought, oh, shit. Like, I have to tell people before they find out on the shelves of Barnes & Noble, right? Like, I
Yeah.
have to tell. I mean, yes, my parents know. Yes, some close friends know. But most people in my life do not know about this relationship. And honestly, we're still navigating it. We're still trying to figure this thing out. So I'm thinking, okay, I don't really want to have one-on-one conversations with everybody in my life. That's a lot of work to do, and it feels very overwhelming. And I don't know how people are going to react. And I thought, well, I have this blog, and I am a writer. And what would be way better for me is to blog about it, let people all talk shit behind my back, and then come to me after they've already done their processing. And like, I don't have to handle any of that stuff. So I thought this is probably the best case scenario here. And that way, nobody's mad at me when they find out about this book. And so I write a blog post. I send it in. I mean, I just share it. But one of these publications that I was writing for at the time said, oh, Mike, I really love this blog post. We've been wanting to talk about sexual fluidity. Could we republish it? And I was kind of like, well, it's out there. I guess so. Like, and I wasn't expecting much. I mean, it was a larger publication, but this was going to be like a niche vertical. This wasn't going to be something very big. So I said, okay, that's fine. So they republished what I wrote. I went to bed that night. And when I woke up the next morning, 100,000 people had shared it. And I had missed calls from NPR, from Huffington Post, from Yahoo News. I mean, it was by far the most overwhelming moment of my life to wake up knowing that millions of people are talking about your sex life. And I mean, really invasive questions, right? Like, I woke up to literally thousands of emails in my inbox, and it was just about as invasive as you can imagine. Like, I mean, some of these questions weren't questions. They were people sexualizing and fantasizing, right? So It was not actually a question. It was like, kind of like, can this fulfill my fantasy? And so it was a really weird moment because I was also getting invitations to speak at Pride events. And I was like, I don't feel qualified for this. Like, I don't feel like this is something
You're like, I've had one relationship.
Yes,
I don't know if I'm
like,
your Pride
I don't even know what my sexuality is. You know, like, people were accusing me of things and asking me to defend a sexuality that, quite frankly, I wasn't clear about. And so it was this really weird moment in my life where, I mean, we had a stalking situation where, so I'm married now to Garrett. We are married. But at the time, my boyfriend, Garrett, he had someone stalking him from the situation. I mean, it got really weird. And it's actually, I'll say this because it's now more public. There's a musical being written about us. And so I know, really, really strange stuff in life. Huh? So at the time, someone reached out and asked if they could.
What's the musical called?
So I don't know actually if it has a name yet. I think
it should be called Not So Straight.
Not So Straight. I love it. So I'll tell the writers that's what you want. Okay, I love it. So what happened was these guys reached out to me, and I think at the time they were like college kids or grad students, and they just said like, hey, we really love the story. Like, could we like have the rights to this and like negotiate something? I was like, it's not going to go anywhere, so fine, whatever. Yeah. And they interviewed us. And then I hadn't heard boo. A few years ago, they said, Mike, we're still working on it. I was kind of like, yeah. I don't expect much. I don't really care. And then this is a pretty recent development. About 3 weeks ago, I got an email that said, Mike, you probably didn't expect that we're still working on this, but we are. COVID really helped while we were in lockdown. And we want to share with you a recording, a demo of one of the songs with the actor. And it was beautiful, like really, really beautiful song. Now, obviously, they've taken some, creative license with the story. So they had to ask if we were comfortable with all of it. But I guess they're going into workshopping it at a college this fall. And by next spring, they're hoping to be off Broadway. So I have no idea what that means, but.
What college is it, just by chance?
I don't remember I probably should know these things. It's in Long Island, but it's a college I'm not very familiar with.
I work a lot in Indiana at the School of Music there. So I thought it would be funny if that happened to be the one.
Oh, that would be super funny. No, these guys are in New York City.
I love that it's 22 years old is the moment in time when you say, well, I don't actually know what I love. I just love this person, and it doesn't have to have any gender connection to it. It's just, I love this person. And what does that mean? And I think I think the reason why Pride would find that so beautiful, as I find it beautiful, is that once one understands love, that you no longer attach it to gender. It just so happens that we've been socialized to attach it to gender, which then confuses the shit out of people, because then they think I'm not supposed to feel this way, when in actuality, it maybe you were supposed to feel that way, and then everyone else is fucked in the head.
Right. No, it was really interesting because I think now, and like I didn't do interviews on this for years because like I had a job, I did good work, and anytime I was interviewed by literally anyone, even if it was a totally opposite topic, this is all they wanted to talk about. And so I was like, no, I'm not, I wasn't, I was at a place in my life where I still felt very objectified by that and very sexualized. And honestly, it also took a toll on my mental health and my body image because it was really surreal to be sexualized so much. Like when I'm not like a social media person. I'm not, typically on there. Garrett doesn't even use social media. And so I'll tell you, this is kind of a funny story. I'm not a social media person, but what I do take seriously is scavenger hunts. And so Goose Island came to Boston and they were doing a scavenger hunt, and like I had to win this thing. And you got extra points if you downloaded Instagram, which was pretty nascent at the time. And you it was a wild goose chase. So if you went to the wrong bar, you had to do a sad selfie, and you just like looking sad. So I had my Instagram. The only reason I had Instagram was 20 sad selfies. And so this article goes viral. And I'm getting like hundreds of messages like, where are the sexy photos of your boyfriend? Why do you just look depressed all the time? And it was really interesting because any picture I posted would get really graphic comments. And I became very insecure about my body. And it took me a long time, actually. I did a lot of work. And now if you look at my Instagram or you look anywhere, you'll see a lot of boudoir photos because I've had this whole reclamation of really exploring my own body image on my terms and the way that I relate to my own body. And that's been another big journey here.
You know what's funny is we're in Amsterdam. I think there's more sexual fluidity here than in other places just because people don't think that one needs to be a certain way, although it still exists, of course. But the funny thing was that I was working with several women who were in traditional heterosexual relationships, and then they started dating females. And I saw that one of the biggest challenges that they were facing was the label of being called lesbian. Because they said, I don't feel myself to be a lesbian. I'm not, I mean, I happen to have, and when I was hearing you, like, it's interesting because even the label gay feels like it's not really the right label because it's not really how it's almost like, I'm almost free to be whatever I want to be. And it happens to be with a man right now. Like that's more the feeling.
Absolutely. I think, and people ask me that a lot of times, what label do you identify with? And I honestly don't care. Like I'm at a point now where like, you can call me bisexual, pansexual, sexually fluid, gay, straight. It does not matter to me. I am attracted, and I've explored my own attraction, right? Like I still will be honest with you. I'm more likely to notice an attractive woman if I walk into a room, but I'm much more attracted. Right. But I'm attracted to men than I used to be. And I've really, one thing we had to do to explore the physical side of our relationship, we actually used pornography a lot because it felt safe to not have to physicalize something, but to be able to say, is there some desire or latent, eroticism here or something we can explore or get excited about together? And so using that was really, really helpful for us to begin to explore parts of ourselves that maybe weren't explored.
But just a question about Garrett before. Was Garrett, had he had a relationship with a male before you were together?
He hadn't. No. In fact, he had dated a woman for 6.5 years before us. So Garrett is kind of only like a long-term serial monogamist, and that was his only other relationship, only other sexual encounter, actually.
This sounds like a great musical. Sorry, I'm already.
Like I'm really celebrating you from over here. Like as I hear you speak, the way you've engaged every aspect of your life, it's so beautiful, intuitive to witness you. Like even when you were vomiting blood and you shit yourself and all that, and actually saying, hey, this might be a sign that I'm not in the right job, and really listening to that, taking the risk. And it feels like you've just taken risk after risk and allowed that to guide you and guide you and guide you. And what I've seen with you, I haven't heard you being a victim, but in fact, you've been able to tap into creativity and kind of say, okay, this doesn't work, but I'm going to try this out. And there's also this aspect of what me and Andy talk on the show, surrendering to something that we don't even know what it's going to look like. And all of a sudden allow that to speak to us. So Mike, amazing.
Oh, thank you. You know, as you were speaking, it reminded me of that moment when I did shit my pants, because I feel like that was a moment that actually changed my life in a lot of ways. In that, what happened was I went to the bathroom, I didn't have my phone on me, and I shit my pants. And I realized I didn't have my phone on me, so I couldn't even ask somebody to help me. And so, like, there was nothing I could do in this moment. I had to leave the bathroom with shit in my pants to solve this situation. And so I'm sitting there and I'm shaking, right? Like, I'm an adult, and I worked at the time because I was working at a small PR firm that we started. So it was a co-working space. So it was a big, big co-working space. A lot of people were there. And I remember shaking and looking myself in the mirror and just saying, this happened. Like, the sooner you realize this happened, I know I want to pretend this didn't happen. I want to ignore it. I want to like wish this didn't happen, but it happened. And the sooner I can acknowledge that this happened, the sooner I can make a plan to get out of this situation. But I could stay in this bathroom all day crying because this sucks. And so I clean. Oh, sorry, go on.
Yeah, the fact that you even said that to yourself, it means that you didn't try to shut it down or push it away. It feels like you fully owned it, even though it sounds very difficult.
Yeah, well, I mean, there was this kind of, I'm almost grateful for that moment. And a lot of these things that were kind of crazy, like people ask me all the time, oh, how would you have prepared for this article if you knew? I wouldn't have written it. Like, I don't, that's not a logical question. This wasn't an expectation, but I'm now grateful for it looking back because it's changed me. And this moment of shitting my pants, you know, I'm grateful for because it was a forced surrender, because there was literally nothing I could do. Like, I could do nothing else except accept the situation. And so I cleaned myself off. I ran out, grabbed my phone, ran back, and I texted a few people, the office manager to put an out of order sign up, a friend to buy me pants, and someone to call a cab for me. And I snuck out the back door and I left. And I mean, it was a really powerful moment. I know it's kind of a silly moment to bring up here and seems off topic, but it was a powerful moment because it made me realize, like, literally shit's going to happen. Life happens. Things are happening here. And the sooner I can accept it is the sooner I can be creative to use the situation and change it.
Wow. I really want to read the article because like, you're a very captivating, charismatic speaker. So I can just imagine, or maybe I'm projecting that the writing is as good as your.
So I have some actual terrible news for you. I mean, it's not so terrible, and I can always send you a PDF, but Mind Body Green, which is the publication that published it, this past summer took it down because they're going only peer-reviewed articles by doctors. However, there is a reprint in Good Men Project and Huffington Post. For legal reasons, they couldn't publish the entire thing, so you can read like half of it. But if you ever need, I have like a PDF of the full thing if you can't get it. I mean, I know people have illegally reposted it, so I'm sure you can find that if you wanted. But if you can't, you can let me know. But yeah, it's really sad because people are always emailing me a broken link and like, why doesn't this work anymore? I was like, I know, I'm sorry.
Well, I can imagine though. Like, I know myself, if something inspires me, I want to read it and read it again until it kind of sinks in, because there's so many golden nuggets in your story and your journey.
Yeah. Well, you know, I think because people ask me a lot of times, why do you think it resonated so much? And one thing I'm grateful for actually today, and why I like doing interviews more, is the conversation, at least here in the US, on sexual fluidity has evolved so much. So 7 years ago, this was a very different conversation. And I'm really grateful for the spaces that we're in now. But the one part of the article that I think, if I had to guess, resonate with a lot of people is where I said, you know, I'm in love with Garrett, and I would never reduce him to one aspect of himself. Like, he's not just a man, he's all these things. Like, I'm in love with so many things. And at any given moment, I have this choice to make. Am I going to move toward or away from love? That's really the only decision that I'm making at any given moment. And I didn't know where it would lead me. I didn't know if it would work out at all, but I just moved toward love. That's all I knew I could do. And I think that's the thing that's quoted to me a lot by people.
Thank you.
I'm thinking on another end, like, you're 22 at the time with, you're 24.
So I was about 25 at the time.
So you're 25. How old is Garrett at that time?
The same. He's 6 months older than I am.
So how is it? Because even the first time you two have intimacy together, it's got to also be like learning something new. Or how was that experience?
100%. You know, people will say all the time, oh my God, you're really in love with this person. And when they see us together, they hear us interacting, they always say, oh my God, there's so much love. The first time you kissed must have been magical. No, not at all. No. I mean, the first time we kissed, I had never felt facial hair before. And Garrett has a full beard. I mean, it was abrasive and it felt uncomfortable. And I hated it. Like I felt sick almost. I did not feel good kissing him. And so for a period afterwards, we would hug, but we never kissed. And so it was like learning something. And it was interesting because I've had, sexual situations, obviously, that were purely sexual without emotional connection or without a lot of emotional connection. So to have a moment where any physicality, not just sex, like kissing or hugging, any physicality is an expression of emotions was really unique as well, because it was purely like, I feel something and I want to express it and I want to find a way that's comfortable and right for me. And that's been an evolutionary process, obviously. And, now it's a lot easier to look back, 7 or 8, well, we've been together now 9 years because 2 years we were together. So 9 years later and, see the situation. But at the time, it was really stressful and there weren't many people I could talk to about it.
Mm. Yeah, it's so, I remember when I was living in Australia, and I've always been quite open-minded, so I haven't really like identified. I mean, I've always felt to be heterosexual, but I also didn't feel like just the label of being gay would be something that would stop me from just exploring. Yeah. And I remember going out one night and having an experience, but I never felt like, oh, I don't necessarily feel like I want to kiss this man, because it just didn't feel like it was coming from a place of curiosity. It was more like, just because you can do it doesn't mean that it's something you just do. But what I thought was interesting was that the freedom to be in that space is something that that I saw lacking in so many others around me, where they would judge anything in regards to direction of homosexuality or whatever that might look like.
Yeah. I think I like you. I'm blessed in that I think I've always been considered myself a pretty open person. And, I remember like I lived in San Francisco. I had a lot of gay friends. Even here in Boston, I had a lot of gay friends. So it was something that I always thought like you, like if ever I felt an inclination to go a certain way, sure, like whatever I feel called to do. And it just hadn't come up. And I think that really helped me because, and I'm grateful, my parents are pretty open-minded. I won't say that like everybody has completely removed any internalized homophobia, but I think that like I didn't grow up in like this fundamentalist Christian household where this was told to be the worst thing in the world. So I think that really helped me, and my heart really goes out to the messages I get from people who have that level of conditioning and really have that level of self-hatred. And I just think my story, I don't know that I would have been able to explore this entire situation had I grown up with that. And that really saddens me because Garrett's the love of my life, and I wouldn't have gotten to experience that.
How does it feel to be brought forward as this sort of speaker for the Pride community, where obviously like you're the kind of poster child of what we would like to see society to be?
Well, I think that, right. So there's problematic aspects to all this, right? Like, of course, I'm fully recognized, like I'm this, white, thin, cis, upper middle class person, right? I'm, Garrett and I are monogamous. We don't go to like bars and clubs. Like, I totally understand the problematic, like respectability politics of like, Mike is this ideal. And like, listen, he's not too loud or too flamboyant, which I certainly can be. But, this is the image that's bestowed upon me. And I think it's been really interesting because even from the beginning, I've always felt underqualified to speak about, LGBTQ plus issues. And I didn't want to speak at Pride events because and even now, right now, I'll be honest with you, in my work, I'm running a LGBTQ plus men's group. And it's the first time I've ever explicitly worked in that audience. Now, I have a lot of clients, obviously, in that audience, and they've been asking for this forever, but I've always been very timid for those very reasons. I, want to make sure that we are creating space for a whole bunch of different perspectives. And I fully recognize that my perspective is one that people with, partially homophobic attitudes might, which is it on both sides actually, because some people might really like me, and then the other side, I'm very threatening as well, because I'm also like, oh my God, anyone can turn gay. Like this is really bad. So this
you can like hang around me, you might get, it might be contagious.
Exactly. So I think there's the both aspects of it, and it's really interesting because like, I'm not an object. I'm just trying to live my life. And so I think for years, that's why I didn't want to do interviews and I didn't want to talk about this, because I was so fed up with these narratives people try to put on me. I mean, I probably shouldn't say this, but I will. When I was on an NPR show once, they wanted to talk to me about pornography and how I used, porn. And he said a few different things. The host, he said one was, well, you said that porn was a crutch. Like, so that's a horrible thing, right? And I was like, since when is a crutch a bad thing? Like, I use a crutch to help me walk when I can't yet walk. Like, that's actually a great thing. I don't know why our society thinks it's a bad term. And I said, and he's like, so like, I want you to be able to say right now that, porn made you gay. And I was like, that's not true.
Are
like,
you serious?
Yes. Like, they were like really pushing me into this kind of narrative. And then they wanted me to say, he said, like, I just don't believe your story. I don't mean to be square, but I don't believe you. I was like, listen, man, I don't care if you believe me. Like, I'm the one living it. You're not. I don't know what to say to that. So it was really interesting. I feel like, it took me a long time to own this story and own the parts of myself and develop a level of self-confidence where, I know before the show, I said, I don't mind if you ask me any question, because I've done a number of these interviews and because I feel like I've really internalized my own truth. But I think that 7 years ago, I was still exploring and still questioning and still like, am I problematic? Am I taking up someone's space? And like, there was just a lot of things. It was really an overwhelming time for me.
Oh, I just think, if I let it into my system a little bit, I feel so uncomfortable because there's so much change going on all at the same moment under the magnifying glass of a society that still isn't capable of holding the space that you would need to figure it out. Because everyone needs to put you in a box so they can feel comfortable about the categorization. It's just horrible.
It was rough, but I'm grateful that I'm at this point now where I can talk about it, because I do think these are important things to talk about. I'm so excited about where conversations on sexual fluidity and pansexuality are going today. And so it's exciting that I got here, but it took me a while. It took me a little bit of therapy too.
I have a question for both of you. As you both had relationships with females, do you ever together say, hey, we would like to have sex with females again?
Great question. So we have talked about it.
Because let me tell you, actually, if I go either way, I could imagine I'd still be curious on the other end as well.
Yeah, we have not physicalized that, I'll be totally honest. We've talked about it. It's certainly been a sexy fantasy we've talked about quite a bit, but it's not something that we've ever, explored. And part of that is, we're not sure if, we were open at a point. We actually did have one experience together with a female at one point way back when, but we've done it. But, now, having been together 9 years and we've been exclusive monogamous for that time, it's a question of, do we want to always be monogamous or not? And I think we feel pretty comfortable being monogamous, but I will say that, if I'm being totally vulnerable here, watching porn together and physicalizing with maybe a woman in porn could be exciting. So there are ways to still play with that.
Yeah, totally. No judgment on this side. On that one, at least. We might judge other things, but no. I've been really grateful for how you, Bambos, articulated it earlier, is that if I look at how society evolves, if there's not people like you who are willing to surrender to what is and not live by trying to satisfy any other standards or expectations, then we don't evolve. Because in a way, we're only defined by all of the belief systems that we brought to that moment. And so in a way, it feels in this kind of beautiful exploration that you've taken in your life. And I'm really, really impressed with that.
Oh, thank you. I say this a lot, but I think so often like labels and theories are beautiful ways for us to kind of generalize, extrapolate lived experience, explain people's lived experiences. But those labels and theories are only there to explain you. So I always tell people, like, if your lived experience is different than a label or theory, guess what? You've just disproven that label or theory, right? That's not applying to everybody. You've taught the whole universe, the whole world more about what life is, what it means to be human. You're not the wrong thing. You are right. Any label or theory is there to explain you. If it can't explain you, that's the wrong thing. And I think we get so, I know in all types of labels and theories, not just around sexuality or gender, but I think that so much shame comes from feeling like I don't fit into this box, or I'm supposed to be like this. Why am I wrong? And I want to recenter that and say, no, you're right. And we're just learning more about the world around us.
Yeah. Yeah, it's identity. I mean, it's one of the hardest things one has to sort of, they build and then they try to, lessen its grip on you, and then you live a free life again, right?
In my life, also in my early 20s, I did take it further with a man. He kept on flirting with me, and I told him, listen, if I ever want to have sex with a man, you be it. Like, you're very beautiful. And it got to the point where we were naked on bed, but I couldn't take it to the next step. And I'm like, and it was really beautiful because he really respected where I was at. And when I said, I really love that I came up to here, but I don't feel that I can or desire at this point to take it further. And so as I was listening to your story, I couldn't help but connect to that part of my own journey. And it's very beautiful.
Yeah. It is. No, thank you for sharing that with me. I mean, it's so beautiful, that the level of openness and exploration, and then, hey, something might not be for you. And that's great. Like, there's nothing wrong with, I've done lots of things in my life that weren't for me, and that's okay too. And I think just for me, it's just this not being gripped by fear, not, feeling like I'm not going to go for something because I'm afraid. I mean, there was an opportunity with someone I really had emotional feelings for, and I'm so grateful I went for it because it ended up being something great. And I just wonder about all the people out there, because of our societal conditioning, who are too afraid to go for that. And so,
clearly.
Well, I was also brought up in a very macho culture. So I was looking around all the straight men, and I was like, fuck. And then I had a group of gay friends. We'd go out, dance, carefree, and really like all over the place. And I was like, wow, like,
what do I want?
I'm identified as that, but this looks really fun.
Yeah.
So part of my curiosity was also like, wow, what if?
I'm glad you said that, because I think so often, and I don't want to minimize, the oppression that many LGBTQ plus people feel, but there's some ways that I feel like it's really freeing, because people just don't give a shit. Like I feel like when, as I, dated women, when I was in more quote unquote straight culture or seen as straight, people might be more critical of what I'm wearing, or critical. Like, no one cares now. I can do whatever the hell I want. And planning a wedding was awesome. Planning a same-sex wedding was amazing, because there are no rules. There are no expectations. I could do whatever the hell I wanted. And people were just like, oh yeah, I guess that's fine. Like, I don't. So we had a kick-ass 3-day wedding in Aruba. We had like so many fun events, and we just did whatever the hell we wanted. And like, what we felt, I was like, Gary, you feel like wearing that? Cool. I don't care if we match, like, wherever you want. Like, there's just no expectations. And so I think there is something really liberating. And I've talked about this quite a bit, but I always say, queerness is saving the world and changing the world. And the reason I say that is because queerness is the fundamental belief that who you are is right? Like, if it's sexually fluid, if it's, I will even group that straight. Like, you can be straight and like be truly, truly who you are. And especially queer communities of color have always been paving the way to advance society, whether it's with fashion, whether it's with, slang and language. This has always been moving forward, definitely here in the US. And so, like, because what queerness is really about is the freedom to be yourself, right? And that includes straight people. That includes every person out there. Like, I just want to live in a world where, like, we're liberated to. Why do I feel like, oh my God, the shirt's too gay, I can't wear it? What a stupid thing. If I like a shirt, I'm going to wear a shirt, right? Like, that is so silly, but we live in a world where we don't even feel liberated to wear the clothing we want, or we have to worry about our mannerisms or the way we speak, or being macho enough and fighting somebody. I mean, so much violence comes from this idea of masculinity, or somehow being gay is less masculine, which again, doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. I had a friend. It's funny because most of my life, my closer friends have been gay. And I've always laughed because I always felt like anyone that had to overcome the disapproval of society and could come out the back end and make peace had character. So, I mean, I almost found the people in my life who were rounded because they'd overcome things.
Yeah.
So, and I associated it more with that than anything else. But one of my close friends was in the Netherlands, and they arrived to the airport, and like I held their hand when we were coming out of the gate And it was interesting because it was this moment when I realized, wow, I could be attacked for this. Like it was this weird, like visceral experience. Like, wow, how would it feel to always feel that, hey, if I showed any expression of love and affection publicly, it could then be, and I think that like heterosexuals don't think about that. You know, we had a friend on the show who was African American in the U.S. And I forget the term that he used, but I really thought that they have the luxury of not dealing with that problem. Yep. You know, so it's not their problem. So there's a luxury of not having to worry.
Right.
When you get pulled over by a police officer, being told keep your hands on the wheel. You know, all the 20 things that they're told.
Absolutely.
And I do think that there's so much luxury or not having an inconvenience to realize that isn't necessarily the case for others.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. That privilege. And I don't talk about this as often, but you're making me reflect on it. You know, early on in our relationship, we were really afraid to seem, even though we were like out at this point, quote unquote, we were afraid to seem romantic in public. And it was just something that I had, seen a lot of. I remember even being in San Francisco on vacation, which is a very gay friendly city, and really being afraid to like kiss in public or hold hands. And, there are things like, even today, we've been together forever. I'm not really a huge PDA person, but I've had to like check in, like, is that internalized homophobia? And would it be any different with a woman? And like, these are questions I have to ask myself a lot because of course I still have internalized homophobia, right? Like, I'm still pulling things out of myself, and I'm also pulling out snap judgments I have about people who, we talk about respectability politics, who live a very different lifestyle than me. I mean, people that choose to sleep with, multiple different people every day. Great, go for it. That's wonderful for you. And I have to check in my own kind of biases on those things.
Yeah. It would be great to hear out of your mouth a judgment to somebody else. He's so gay. Sure. Like, oh my God, who is this? Is it me talking? What is this?
Right. You've got to like check in on those things. And it's sort of, it's interesting. I think actually one thing, I know you have a Netherlands version as well, RuPaul's Drag Race. So I never felt connected to gay culture because even today, most of our friends are couples, other couples we go to dinner with and stuff. And unfortunately, all of the long-term gay couples I know have broken up. So we don't have so just by chance, most of our friends are straight. The vast majority of my friends. I have a few, single gay friends, but most are straight. And I don't drink, partially because of my health issues. I don't really go out to clubs. And so I've never felt connected to gay culture. And it was really actually through two things. One, watching RuPaul's Drag Race and really kind of learning and getting, which I felt so silly. I felt like a middle-aged straight woman trying to learn about, gay culture, watching these things. But the other thing was I created a meetup group for gay men in the Boston area just looking to have friends. And because I just wanted to have, more conversations and more platonic relationships, especially given my history of feeling sexualized by a lot of gay men.
Yeah.
And so that really, those were two things that really helped me to start to work through a lot of stuff.
Yeah. When you say that sexualized thing, it dawned on me something that I also experienced. As I was very gay friendly, I also saw that I was seen as this target of, oh, we're going to convert him at times.
Mm-hmm.
So when you said that, it reminded me of like, oh yeah, I remember those times. I used to sell suits when I was 16 years old at in San Fernando Valley, in Los Angeles. So I'm the only straight 16-year-old kid in a fully gay department, right?
Sure.
And they were just, I mean, I didn't experience it as sexual harassment, but today I'm sure none of that would stand, I remember my boss kept saying, Andy, give me a coffee like my men, strong, black and dark, or whatever he was saying, that kind of thing. So yeah, it was, that kind of thing.
Yeah. And it was interesting because I think maybe at a point in my life, I would have wished women would have sexualized me like that, but I had never experienced that from women. So it was a very foreign environment for me to have all of these messages and all these things, coming at me. And just, again, like the invasive questions, because I think like you, they wanted to convert you. I think I was already convertible. So there was this kind of like fantasy fulfillment going on. And it really took me some time to work through that.
Were the messages coming from males or females? I assume
males.
Males.
Okay. Yeah. I'm saying I would have in the past before that preferred probably women. I had never been sexualized like that by anyone.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden to have it all at once. It was a lot. So yeah, it was all by males. Usually, there are some females too, though. Interestingly,
And in a weird way, I hear a lot from my female friends. If they look at their Facebook, they've got like 100 ads, invites from random men a day.
yeah.
And,
I've
and
definitely gotten that. I've gotten pictures sent to me, and so
Oh,
I mean, if I don't know somebody, I usually just don't accept. Like I just, or an Instagram, I won't even look at it. A lot of the time, but yeah, I've gotten things for sure.
how did you deal with last name when you got married?
So we kept our own, which again, like I feel like there are no rules. We don't have to do anything. And so if we choose to have children, and we probably will, we're going to hyphenate. So there'll be Iamele Lack. Garrett's last name's Lack, but I've just kept my last name and he's kept his.
you got a cool last name. Let's get that straight.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
Except
my dad's from Italy.
It's really hard because the I, it looks like an L. So
yeah, we don't usually have two vowels in a row like that. So everybody assumes it's an L because like Lameli. And all the time. People are like, why did you keep your last name lowercase? People ask me that question all the time. I was like, I didn't. This is,
they thought you were trying to be cool.
Yeah.
From all these interviews you did, you mentioned the one dickhead. Did in that instant, did you see that individual had an agenda that they were trying to create to kind of, and what was that agenda, do you feel?
So there was a narrative that they wanted to share, especially like that pornography is universally bad was certainly one aspect of it. And I think, so on a show like NPR, just to tell you how it goes when they're pre-recorded, they'll have a producer. And so often the host will get off the interview for a moment and listen to the producer and ask what the producer wants. So like reality TV, there is this idea of they want to get the soundbite they want, right? Like there's a kind of produced aspect to it. And so it was hard. It was scary for me for them to say like, so would you say this? Like they'll use a lot of leading questions like that to kind of try to get you, to say something. And I don't think I gave the interview that they wanted. So they cut a lot of that part out. But it was interesting. I've been on a few like that. I'd say, for the ones like this that are conversational, pretty freaking easy. But ones that are very short and they want a soundbite, those are tough.
Wow. And also in a strange way, almost why would you want to do any of those? Because they're not really looking to connect and understand you. They're looking to basically use your situation to suit a narrative they've already got in their heads.
Well, I think so at the time, early on, the first day or first week, I took some interviews. NPR never called me before. Like, I'm like, okay. Yeah. But, I think actually I'm sort of kicking myself now because I actually think they would have done a good job. But NPR has another show, like, I think it's called like Sex, Death, and Taxes or something like that. And it's a really popular show. I wish I said yes to that one. I just started saying no to everything because after that experience and a few experiences like that, I just said, like, I don't want to do this anymore. And also, this isn't all of who I am. Like 6 months after the article came out, I don't want to talk about this anymore. I'm done. Yeah. Like I'm a more interesting person. And I think it took me a while to feel this integrated in my life where now I feel like any question someone asks me about any topic shows all of me because you can't separate me anymore. But, in my 20s, that wasn't the case.
No.
You mentioned in the beginning, you wrote this blog, right? And the intention was in a way that you didn't have to tell everyone one by one. So how many people in your life stuck around and how many people left?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'd say the vast majority stuck around. I'm from, liberal Boston, Massachusetts. So it's pretty, people tend to be pretty progressive around here. I won't say that's true of everybody. And Garrett is from rural Pennsylvania, which isn't as much the case, over there. I would say friends from college and high school, I probably lost some of those. Some of that, whatever, like that's growing up. And there are definitely people in my life I'm not as close to or maybe weren't as supportive of me. But I've also found a bunch of new people who are supportive of me. So, in the long run, it works out.
Will you go to Garrett's family for Christmas and the holiday season? Yeah. And when you're there, because it is a different background than the liberals of Boston, how is it for you to be in that environment? And experiencing that.
Yeah, so here's where I'm gonna get myself in trouble. No, okay, I mean it's good. No, I'm kidding. It's first of all, they're not gonna listen, but no, it's good. It's good. I mean, that relationship's come a long way. Garrett, they're from a small town, they're a prominent family, so there definitely was some stuff around. Like Garrett was a golden boy. He was captain of the swim team. His girlfriend in high school was the Christmas queen, whatever that means. You know, like it was like, you know, this was
perfect. We have a perfect son.
Yeah, they were
Oh,
just that white picket fence was calling. So, you know, I think
Mike,
that
you
was
messed him up.
you fucked it all up.
for sure. You know how many people in life. Mike's the bitch. Mike
Oh my
ruins
God.
Garrett.
I can
The
imagine.
problem is Garrett is just inherently so likable. Everybody likes him. So like by default, I'm gonna be the bitch no matter what. And that's fine. I actually play the villain pretty well. But you know, so you know, it's taken some time. And also I think just I'm not used to being in an environment where things are so gendered. Like they had a New Year's Eve party and they had a man soup and a woman soup. And I said, Garrett, what is the difference? And Garrett said, oh, you're not from middle America. It just means meat. The man soup has meat in it. Like, so there's like, you know, these sort of things that I'm just not used to. And there have been times, I'll be honest, where I've been introduced as Garrett's friend before we were married. Once we got married, that changed, but I was introduced as Garrett's friend. And it was uncomfortable for me to be in that environment.
Of course.
I'm listening to the U.S. Like I'm Mediterranean, so I'm listening to the U.S. traditions sometimes, and it just
I'm with you.
My mind.
I'm with you on that.
I'm stepping into a David Lynch movie.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right. Twin Peaks.
Mike, was there, like we said sexualized, but what was there any hate or discrimination towards, and to what degree did you feel that was a risk for you?
Like, again, if by risk you mean would I have written the article, I didn't know about that. Risk in the streets, pretty low. You know, I don't think people know my face or know who I am. You know, I definitely did get a lot of online hate though, from all sides, not just from, you know, straight people or like super religious people, although that too. Recently, I was a pastor asked me to be on a show to have a nuanced perspective and canceled me after we recorded it because she said that basically I was too compelling and it would trigger her audience. And she thought she could poke more holes in my story. And so, you know, that was, I guess, a recent discrimination. I mean, we've had,
let's stay with that for one moment. Okay.
Yeah, please.
The beauty of what you just said, because the reason why Bambos and I are in awe of you is because you are so grounded in holding the tension of the space you've created for yourself that others will appreciate and admire you for that. But the same reason they'd appreciate and admire you, you're leading the way for others that say, wow, I can do this as well.
Yeah.
So the fact that the pastor said we can't run the show because Mike is just too articulate and he's too grounded, we would rather have somebody on who looks like they're a mess, who doesn't have any sense of being. And then we can say, look, this is going to happen to you if you go down that path. I mean, how fucked up is that?
Right. I was really angry because the thing is, she clearly wanted to have a nuanced conversation. She has personal interests, but she was afraid of what her audience would think. Because the interview itself went well, but then thinking about her audience, it was a real struggle. But yeah, I mean, I've gone, and the hate didn't just come again from that religious side. I got a lot of hate from, you know, the gay community of people saying you're lying, this isn't true, you know, like you're gay, like a lot of things, or like psychologist. There's a guy who was writing a book, a psychologist, and he sent me like a questionnaire about my childhood and things to know because he didn't believe my story. I mean, there was a lot of stuff. So yeah, a lot of that I could ignore.
Because I think that people would try to create the narrative again, like the professor, to say, "Oh, were you sexually abused as a kid?"
Yeah, right.
This is just your background coming forward from
a
dark place, you know, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's sick. Or they would say, you know, you were secretly gay the whole time and you were afraid, so your parents must be homophobic. I mean, there was a whole bunch of things that, like, that type of stuff came out. You know, in person, you know, we're grateful. I don't face a ton of discrimination, but there was an incident recently, actually. We were on a plane going to Aruba. This was about a year and a half, 2 years ago now. And it's in the Caribbean.
Yeah, exactly. We see you have a fondness for Aruba.
Oh yeah, my grandparents.
That's what I said.
My grandparents bought timeshare there in like the 70s, so we've gone every year of our life. So anyway, so we were going there. Garrett and I were sitting next to each other, and a man said, "You have to change seats because my wife wants to sit here." And Garrett's like, well, we paid to sit next to each other. We want to sit next to each other. And he's like, that's bullshit. You need to change seats right now. And Garrett's like, well, like, we'll let you sit in the aisle if you want, so you can be near your wife. But like, we paid for these seats. Like, we're married. And after this, he just, I guess I didn't sit. So it was kind of the man was in the window, Garrett was in the center, and then I was in the aisle. So I didn't hear what was happening. But Garrett told me after that the man was just calling him homophobic slurs and threatening him and saying like I kept calling him Mary. And I wish I heard this, because I think Garrett's much more kind of he'll never like speak up. He's not very confrontational. He's a very kind person. I would have said, we're going to chalk this up to a hate crime and call the stewardess over. But it was so that was an incident that was very blatant recently.
I'm really sorry that you had to go through that.
Yeah, you have to face a society which is so limited in its capacity to see things in nuance. It has to have a label, and we have to identify or not identify, and that allows us to make peace with our brains. I mean,
there's an aspect of you're put in a box, you're bad.
Yeah.
So and then I'm going to justify why I'm going to treat you a certain way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's been the thing that's driven me crazy about this whole thing, is keeping myself out of a box. Because every time someone tried to put me in a box, it just felt so limiting. And even just talking about this one issue felt so limiting. And now I'm grateful to feel like it's all a part of my whole big collective story, and it feels a lot more fluid.
Beautiful.
Yeah, there's that famous line from what's it called? That Patrick Swayze movie. Can't put Daisy in the box or something.
That's right. Yeah, can't put baby in the corner.
No, baby in the corner.
Of course.
The worst line that made the biggest impression on the film.
Yeah.
Okay, Mike.
Which one was that?
What was the movie that Patrick Swayze?
Dirty Dancing.
Dirty Dancing. Yeah, Dirty Dancing. Thank you for joining us. It was really great to be with you, and I appreciate the fact that obviously you've told this story several times before, but we hadn't heard it, so it was really incredible to spend time with you.
I think we have to figure out another excuse to get you on.
Yeah, totally different subject.
Another different subject.
What I will say, if you need a good excuse, I have the best engagement story you've ever heard in the world. Like, shockingly good.
I mean, I'd like to hear that, but I'd like to kind of maybe do like a nutrition angle. Like you're vomiting blood and you turned around your life. Like that would be its own story. And I think that would be a really great thing to have on as well.
You can tell us the engagement story offline.
Perfect.
Thank you. Yeah, we really appreciate you making time for us today. Much love.
Thanks, guys.
Bye. Wow.
This was by far my favorite show this season.
What an inspiration.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when I said he's charismatic, you can always feel when a guest is really giving. I felt really energized being with him.
Yeah, me too. I also felt that what I like with these stories is where we're not falling into the victim or the persecutor sort of roles, but we're allowing ourselves to explore together what it is and allow the dialogue to guide us. Yeah. And I felt that with Mike today, was that there was just, where does the Inquisition take us and how are we finding and what are we discovering? And that was really, really beautiful as well.
He also has an amazing way to self-reflect. Like as he's sharing his story, I just see that he has a brilliant way of introspecting himself.
Yeah.
And checking in, and asking really uncomfortable questions.
Yeah.
For me, this is a real hero story.
Yeah.
Hero's really journey.
It's a hero's journey. And we'll see it made into a musical, off-Broadway musical. That would be fun to watch someday. Thank you for being with us. It's Thursday. We got one more show tomorrow.
One more show, people.
Do you know who the show is with tomorrow? It isn't Joe Cryer because he canceled.
Oh.
You did. You didn't know that, did you? We got another guest on who was a guest that we had on earlier, and I don't remember exactly who it is.
Bob Deutsch.
No, it is not Bob Deutsch. But if you want, you can check out Bob Deutsch's shows. He's done
3.
He's done 3, and I can tell you, I get messages from our audio engineer. He continues to tell me how much he enjoys the shows with Bob Deutsch. So
nice.
You got to watch those if you get a chance, or listen. We love you, and we will see you tomorrow on
A Wonderful Chaos.
Yes, we will.